Far about Diddy's life on the inside. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. It's been a big week for 54-year-old Sean Diddy Combs, kicking it off with a federal indictment on Monday, and now we're getting word that he's on suicide watch. He's being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, in the Eastern New York Judicial District, much to the dismay of his legal team. Earlier this week, Diddy filed for bond 2 separate times, his attorneys writing in the motions that MDC is not fit for pretrial detention. They even requested he be transferred out of New York to Essex County in New Jersey, but it was ultimately up to the Bureau of Prisons to decide where he ended up. According to Diddy's legal team, an inmate was murdered at MDC just this summer, and at least 4 inmates have died by suicide over the past 3 years. Now, their client is on suicide watch, meaning he's separated from traditional prison housing. It's unclear whether he's actually suicidal or if it's just a safety precaution, but we do know a mental health professional visits his cell at least several times a day. The U.S. Department of Justice Institute of Corrections describes suicide watch as supervisory precautions taken for suicidal inmates that require frequent observation. So what does all that mean? For that, we go to criminal defense attorney Mike Korbanix. One of the reasons that P. Diddy's attorneys were saying we don't want him there is because they say it's really dangerous. There have been suicides, there have been murders, apparently. Is that true? Do you think it's a pretty dangerous place?
All jails are dangerous depending on who the inmate is, quite frankly. So, I mean, it's a high-profile case. Nobody knows where the case is really going and what it really entails yet. So I would assume that they're just being overcautious because he's not like your average defendant. He's a very well-known person who has a lot of prestige, and it would be interesting to see what goes on in the jail with him. But I'm sure he's going to need a little bit more of protective coverage in the jail.
I'm wondering if that's why they placed him on suicide watch now, kind of what you were saying, protective coverage, because he is such a high-profile inmate. Do you think that could be part of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, going from a life where you live in a mansion to going to sit in a jail facility is not something easy to deal with.
Also, whenever we're thinking about cases like this, the big federal ones and just similar allegations, I go to Jeffrey Epstein. And obviously, we know what happened there. He never was able to make it to trial because he died by suicide. Is that something that everyone is trying to avoid here to make sure that any of the inmates don't actually die by suicide?
Well, of course. I mean, a jail has a responsibility. It's a jail. People in the jail, in that jail, are being held. They're presumed innocent, and there's a responsibility, since the person's not free to do what they want, to protect them and to make sure that they're mentally stable and that they're protected.
When I heard suicide watch, my mind went to Rex Heuermann, who's the alleged Go-Go Beach killer. Obviously, he is still presumed innocent at this time, but I do recall after he was arrested, he was placed on suicide watch. And I'm wondering if that's just kind of another thing because it was a big case, a big name, that he was not suicidal at the time, and it's possible now that P. Diddy isn't suicidal.
That's something that's very difficult to really answer because we're not doing the interviews of the inmate. The inmate gets an evaluation when they come in. They get checked for their health, their physical health, as well as their mental health. And that's where those sort of decisions are made. It's not just sort of something because it's P. Diddy, we're putting him in. They have to have some sort of facts to substantiate that.
Let's say moving forward that they determine, okay, he's fine, he is not a risk for suicide, he's good to go. Do you think that P. Diddy could ever be placed in general population? Obviously, he's someone that a lot of people know. First of all, high profile, but then also he's got some pretty severe allegations that he's up against. Would he be safe in Gen Pop?
That's a very difficult question. I think because of if I was his attorney, I would want to make sure that he was being kept in a place where he's safe and not be used as some sort of way that some inmate may want to just move their street credibility, for lack of a better term, by just saying, yeah, I went after P. Diddy because, he wasn't supposed to be